Ladies and gentlemen of Trinidad and Tobago, beautiful Diego Martin Central, welcome to the national issue platform of Trinidad and Tobago in this local government election. I salute, of course, our honorable political leader, the Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. the Honorable Keith Christopher Rawi. I recognize my colleague, the Minister of Finance, the member for Diego Martin East. I recognize, I heard him say it tonight, his first time maiden speech, I didn't believe it, Simon de Nobrega, sitting under the careful watch and gaze of the capable, most talented chairman of the Diego Martin Regional Corporation. Let me hear your love. Ladies and gentlemen, viewing public of Trinidad and Tobago, Deputy Political Leader Joan Yule Williams, my cabinet colleagues, the young, beautiful, talented son of none other than Kenneth Valley, sitting here in our audience tonight, past Member of Parliament for Diego Martin Central. Generations participate and we welcome them all. I say to you, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi alaikum. I say to you, Ram Nam Satya Hai. I say to you, greetings in the name of Jesus Christ, the Lord Savior, because we are a national party talking to a nation built by the People's National Movement, but including all. Tonight I come to address you on a few issues. Do we believe that we can carve a new vision for our country? Do we want in that vision to recognize a Trinidad and Tobago that is inclusive of morality, of purpose, of development, and of common sense? Well, if you want that to be the vision, if you want that vision to be reality, then we must focus on the issues that have to be addressed and on the solutions to take us to that better vision. We came in 2015 and we said to Trinidad and Tobago that let's do this should be our motto. We come today to give report on getting it done. Our detractors in the form of the UNC have resolved themselves to a campaign which is based upon division, and I genuinely reflected upon my colleagues this week in the opposition. And the only thing that I could discern from Kamla Prasad Bisesa was, who the hell cares? The second thing that turned out to be big news for the UNC was a pre-action protocol letter written to Terence Dialsing when he said that the figures for the mortality rates for H1N1 swine flu were hidden under the UNC. Kamla Prasad Bisesa, you are heralded as the queen of everything in the UNC. When Terence Dialsing asks if you knew or didn't know, surely you can't take offense because you are the member of the inner bar. You are the SC. You are the MP. You have a distinguished career. Weren't you the Prime Minister? I mean, come on, Kamla. Your skin can't be that thin. So let's talk about real issues tonight. Crime, security. Certainly that is a real issue for us. Certainly in our country, without reference to politics, to party, to structure, to race, to circumstance, everybody has a stake in crime. in seeing it crushed. The UNC speaks of a crime plan. We speak of an anti-crime plan. The UNC says they coulda, woulda, shoulda. We came, we entered. We now talk tonight about getting it done. So let's put the most topical issue now, the most current issue of the decriminalization of marijuana into the context of what it does to improve our situation in the fight against crime. I want to take this opportunity tonight to remind you of a few things and then to connect a few dots. Number one, if you do the crime, you should pay the time. You should do the time. You should feel the consequence. In our country, our criminal justice system is operated such that if you have a serious charge to answer, you go to the magistrate's court, they bring you before that judge, the magistrate, they ask you to go through something called a preliminary inquiry. They go through that circumstance to see if you have a real case to answer, then they send you to the High Court. In our country, corruption is a major issue. In our country, gang activity and warfare is a major issue. In our country, the pace of justice is an important issue. The UNC had their turn at the wheel. In the UNC plan, Kamla Persad-Bissessar established a Ministry of Justice. She had an Attorney General. She had a Minister of Legal Affairs. She had a Minister of National Security. Actually, she had 7. She had 7 Ministers of National Security when you add the junior ministers. And in Kamla's plan, we saw a state of emergency. We saw a fence built around the jail. They spent a small $80 million to build a fence, but we did not see a single ounce of issue analysis leading to a development, to a solution. And Kamla Persad-Bissessar did one piece of legislation to cause the quickening of justice. She introduced Section 34. That is the only piece of law of substance intended to quicken justice that Kamla brought to reality as the Prime Minister of the cabinet that proclaimed Section 34. Why do I say all of this? Why is it important in local government elections? It's not only to remind you of what they stand for, what they did, but it is to put it in comparison to what we have on offer. So we say to you, plant and machinery, people, processes, and law is our structure of a solution. We say you cannot have justice on time. You cannot be judged to pay the time if you did the crime if you can't get to court. You can't get to court if you have a whole bunch of matters that lounging and floundering in the system. If you don't have enough judges, you don't have any courts, you don't have a prosecutor, you don't have a defense attorney, you have no rules of court, you have no computerized environment. Because that is what the UNC did with $400 billion. They shut down the judiciary's management program. They did not open a single courtroom in Trinidad and Tobago. They did not expand the judiciary. They did not improve the processes. They didn't hire a single person. And what we did, first thing, we believe in data. We believe in being transparent. You recall that the first public consultation I did as Attorney General was on the prison system. It was out of that I shared with Trinidad and Tobago the definition of insanity. That definition of insanity is spending $25,000 a month on one prisoner per month, locking up a man for not paying his maintenance. In one case, a man had failed to pay $12,000 in maintenance. They lock him up for 1 year. So we spent $25,000 times 12 to make him pay the $12,000. Now, come on. That can't make sense. So in getting it done, we analyzed the prisons, analyzed the court structure, looked at the number of cases in the arena, looked at the number of judges, prosecutors, defense attorneys, looked at if we had a witness, looked at processes, and we, number one, went to Parliament, passed the law to move the number of judges from 36 judges in the High Court to 64. Number two, the number of judges in the Court of Appeal from 12 to 15. Number three, we said that we required the case flow to work right. Instead of night court and day court and afternoon court, just put rules of court in. We introduced the criminal proceedings rules, and last year the judiciary statistics demonstrate in 1 year we had a 44% increase in the right direction. We said you need to make sure that judges can focus on actually getting justice delivered by focusing on serious matters. And then we said, let's start where the matter starts. We went to the magistrates' court. We see year on year 146,000 new cases coming into the court with 43 magistrates in 12 courts. We went to the Parliament. We said 104,000 of that 146,000 cases are capable of being removed instantly by converting road traffic offenses to violations, by digitizing the licensing office, by installing red light cameras, by putting in a demerit system, by digitizing your license, by employing more people in the licensing division. And by January of next year, those 104,000 cases will come out the system, and you go from 146,000 and you reduce and take away 104,000. We then said, of your 26,000 preliminary inquiries every year, we see that a preliminary inquiry can take 20 years to be done. Look at the Piarco Airport case. 20 years ago, the airport was built. 14 years ago, the preliminary inquiry started. And last week, the judge said, start over. Without determining guilt or innocence, we say, you must have your day in court. And with one more amendment to be done on that suite of law, we will, in the early part of next year, remove 26,000 cases from that 146,000. That leaves us with the topic of marijuana. Marijuana, cannabis, kush, ganja, hashish, whatever you want to call it, it's a dangerous drug. It's a psychotropic substance, meaning you can hallucinate if you take the drug. It's something which if you take, each person may have a different reaction. But what we do know is that every year, approximately 9,000 cases for possession of marijuana end up in the magistrate's court. 146,000 minus 104,000 minus 26,000 takes you to 16,000. If you take away the 8,000, 9,000 marijuana cases each year, you're left with 8,000 cases with 43 magistrates in 12 courts. It is called common sense. Why? The forensics division tells us that if they have to analyze under 60 grams of marijuana, that is 86% of their time. They still have to do rape cases, DNA kit, ballistics, testing, and which matters more when you realize that the judiciary says to people, we will give you a charge for the possession of marijuana, it makes sense to offer the charge up front. Now, I heard an activist on television the other night, an activist who is for legalization of marijuana, say that the Attorney General has not gone far enough, that they want legalization and that the penalties are too high. Let me address that. We propose in our marijuana legislation, the Cannabis Control Bill and in the Dangerous Drugs Act, we say under 30 grams of marijuana, you can be in possession of that without a charge. In other words, then, that is legal. We say between 30 grams and 60 grams, if we catch you with that in public, you will be subjected to a $2,000 fine in a fixed penalty ticket. And we say if you don't pay that fixed penalty ticket, you may be called upon to do community service. And we say if you don't do your community service, you have to have a sanction of law. You can get a maximum of $50,000 in respect of that. What could be objectionable with that? Let me break it down further. You know what 30 grams of marijuana is? It is 3 large cigarette packs full of marijuana. Who on God's earth, as an individual with 3 packs of marijuana, 24 cigarettes in each pack, could be upset with that? You see, we didn't do it because of the volume of the cigarette. We did it because if you go to the court, you'll get a fine. And what we observed is that every year, approximately 500 poor, impoverished, largely African Trinidadian people, black people, Indian people, our 2 major races, very few white people, because I'll come to that in a moment, end up along with brown people and yellow people and red people, because we have us all, and our people, 500 of us, end up in remand condition. You know what remand is? Remand is where you're awaiting a trial. You have been granted bail, because you could get bail for everything except murder and capital offenses. You have a magistrate telling you, you can get bail, and you're waiting to get bail. You can't afford it. You don't have property. You can't pay the bailer. 500 people every year sit down in our jails. What for? For taxpayers to pay $25,000 a month while you sit down in jail. Now, ladies and gentlemen, social justice is the issue. Social justice tells us it is wrong to have 500 people a year in remand when they could be outside doing something productive under community service, under supervision, minding their families. Social justice says, whereas the rich people in our country could afford a lawyer and get out of the bail conditions, the poor people can't. And Kamla Prasad Bisessa's bunch of cronies, they say to us, let's talk some more. They say, let's have a joint select committee. Let's have more discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, all you know a fellow named Wade Mark? Wade Mark, God bless him, is a man that could delay God-given justice. That man's actions speak louder than words. I like Wade Mark privately. We have a good relationship. But as a parliamentarian, I have never met a human being that could delay everything more than Wade Mark, and he's on every committee. And the UNC sends him just to make sure nothing happens. But then they get vexed with me. They say the Attorney General is a strategist. He only brings in simple majority bills, which don't need their consent. And you know what? If the law says you don't need a special majority, That's what's going to happen. And this dangerous drugs amendment that we have and cannabis control bill that we have only require simple majority passage. And therefore, we will ensure that the legislation is done on the floor. But I want to take crime and justice a little further. We have a gang situation. Approximately 211, 220 gangs. We passed an anti-gang bill only when the UNC was in shame for not passing it, for supporting it. Oh, you have an anti-gang bill, nobody get arrested, nobody get charged. When 5 gang leaders were brought before the court, it ended up on page 14 in one newspaper, 7 in another newspaper, because good news don't sell. When they were denied bail because our government passed the bail amendment bill to deny the opportunity to go back on the street and continue criminal enterprise, that was on page 12 and page 10, because good news don't sell. But let's connect marijuana, the advocate for legalization, and gangs. The evidence coming from the OCIU, the Organized Crime Intelligence Unit at the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, says that a large amount of anti-gang activity surrounds marijuana. If you take away the illegal nature of marijuana, 6 large Du Maurier packs of marijuana on a human being, 30 or 3 packs, 30 grams or 3 packs of them being without charge, and another 3 subject to $2,000. What do you think you're going to do to the gang empires that sell marijuana? You understand the connection of the dots? When alcohol was under prohibition in the United States of America and bootlegging, you hide the alcohol in your boots, became reality, it was a high premium. In taking the decriminalization of marijuana forward, we have arranged instead for the money that gangs live on to be taken away from them. And that feeds our follow the money, take the profit out of crime philosophy. But to the person that wants legalization, if you make everything a free-for-all, how are you going to come up with an enterprise? Because a very important side of our marijuana amendments is a licensing regime. We have 8 types of license in everything from production to therapeutic and development and scientific purposes to transportation. 8 kinds of license. You know about copyright? You remember what it was like when people were as young artists coming forward and they had a big problem, because when you can steal somebody's music, like Benjai, like Marshall, and they get nothing back for their effort, why would they make music? Put it in the context of marijuana and cannabis. If you have an opportunity to go into a regulated industry like tobacco, look at the price of West Indian tobacco. Look at the share value. Look at what cigarette shares in companies that own it is equal to. To the person that wants to legalize it, I say to you, if you want full legalization now, you are crippling the economic potential of people that have a chance to actually, in a regulated environment, make some progress. You understand issues now? Kamla's issue is, who the hell cares? Terence Dialsing pre-action protocol letter. Cambridge Analytica never happened, and our issues are reducing the backlog in crime, managing the process better, getting an industry birth, but respectfully. In countries where there is a legalization of cannabis, their criminal justice system does not look like the 20 years of delay that we have here. So I say to those advocates, we must take measured steps forward. The advocate for legalization came further and said, We're treating the religious and sacramental side badly. In our cannabis control bill, we are saying that there's a specific aspect of medicinal use, including medicinal use for children if a doctor says so. And we are also saying that religious or sacramental use will allow you a dispensary, will allow you under 60 grams. And we have heard from the Rastafarian faith that they are happy with that start. But ladies and gentlemen, as we get into crime and security, as we remove the issue of the 8,000 matters in the courts, we say to people that have charges right now under the Dangerous Drugs Amendment, go and ask for a discharge. Go and get your record expunged because the law will now provide that opportunity for you. And we say to them, feel free to approach the Mercy Committee to ask for a pardon so that you have no record. But what do we do further? In crime and security, what matters? To the person who is on a rape charge and to the victim of a rape charge, do you think it is social justice to have a rape victim awaiting a trial of a matter, brave enough to stand as a witness to say, I was raped for 10 years? Every day, back and forward, coming to court to face your accuser. In our country, we have rape victims who were children. 9 years old, coming to court at 25 years old after having had children. Do you think that that is social justice? Do you think that we should listen to Kamla Prasad-Bissessar and talk some more in a joint select committee? Do you think that we should do as she did and not build a single court in this country, not follow crime, not debottleneck the system, have no rules of court? Because, ladies and gentlemen, I want to put one more thing into context here. Our cabinet on Thursday gone approved raising the age for retirement for judges from 65 years to 70 years. Why? Our capable judges retire from the bench and every last one of them are working in the other Caribbean islands. If you take every judge sitting in a criminal matter now and you put them to deal with murder trials alone, it'll take 10 years to clear the backlog. We say, keep your judges, raise the number, but where are we putting them, ladies and gentlemen? By the turn of this year, when you see the move of the Parliament in 2020 across from Tower D back to that beautiful red house that the whole of Trinidad and Tobago is admiring, which cost us half of what the UNC was spending. You may not know this. You know that those sheds over the red house and the roof that was supposed to go on 3 times, if I remember, cost the taxpayers with no roof on $220 million. Dr. Rawi took the task on our heritage buildings. All I remember, Jack Warner, when the president's house roof fell in, condemning the PNM, you saw the president's house fixed under the UNC. You saw a single building restored under the UNC. We didn't restore these buildings out of vanity. The restoration of the Red House is to make sense of moving all the civil courts from the Hall of Justice, taking them down to the waterfront, where we allowed a private developer concessions to build 1,000 car parks, where the Minister of Works and Transport built a walkover so you could walk to the waterfront, so you can open all your civil courts there, yielding in the court of the building which housed the courts at the Hall of Justice, 60 new criminal courts. But we didn't only think of that. We opened 2 children's courts, we opened 1 family court, and we opened a hearing room in Tobago. And with those courts added into the 60 new courts, in our tenure, before January 2020 has ripened, we will have the sight of 74 courts in Trinidad and Tobago for criminal matters and family matters. Let me repeat that. 74 courts. That is to be supplemented by the Magistrates Court in San Fernando, the Magistrates Court in Princestown, the Magistrates Court in Faizabad, the Magistrates Court in Rio Claro, the Magistrates Court at Golden Grove, the Magistrates Court at Arima, without any bubble whatsoever. No corruption, no mismanagement, and let me tell you how. As I come to an end soon, I am the Attorney General of Trinidad and Tobago and Minister of Legal Affairs. The Prime Minister saw it fit to give me that portfolio for the time being. In the management of that portfolio, I can tell you that I have run the AG's office, the Ministry of Legal Affairs, and I inherited the Ministry of Justice. I absorbed that into my pack. I have run it with $1 billion. You know what Anand Ramlogan, Prakash Ramada, and the 4 ministers of justice did with their 3 ministries? It cost them $4 billion. $4 billion for them to run 3 ministries, $1 billion for me to run 3 ministries. And what we did in those new courts, we allowed the judiciary to directly participate in the construction of the courts. Family Court opened, Tobago. Children's Court St. Clair opened. Children's Court Faizabad opened. And that is how we get it done, because we ensure that the people that have ownership of the issues do it together with us. So ladies and gentlemen, stop genuinely for a moment. Analyze the issues in Trinidad and Tobago right now. On the one hand, if I were to ask you genuinely to point to a yellow issue, a UNC issue, I am hard-pressed to think of anything other than who the hell cares and the Alsing pre-action protocol letter, and we don't know Christopher Wiley, even though the whole world know who he is. And on the other hand, we heard from the Minister of Finance telling us how we manage the economy in difficult situations. You've heard from the Attorney General. You've heard from the Minister of Works and Transport. You've heard from the Minister of Health. You've heard from the Minister of Agriculture. You see, on the PNM platform, you don't have a repeating cast. All that you hear on the UNC platform is quite simply 3 people. One is a man best known for spinning a wheel, a man who prides himself on being labeled as coming from the bowels of the PNM. And I say, like any good thing in the bowels, a movement caused his production, and he now stands where he stands. A perfect example of a movement, quite frankly, that is Rodney Charles. And what I tell you is, the other 2 people cannot match what you have heard in terms of issues. If you want a new vision to materialize, you have to be issue-oriented. If you want a new vision to have a chance at full success, local government elections matter. Because without local government elections in responsible people capable of managing it, our reform of our law for local government, the ability to get property taxes at ridiculously low levels into the hands of the corporation to do the work will never happen. You want Glenn Ram back in the local government council? You want Glenn Ramadar Singh back in local government? All you want Anil Roberts in Trinidad and Tobago again? All you want Kamla Prasad Bisesa leading a band of merrymen and merry women? All you want coulda, shoulda, woulda, thought of, not quite sure, don't know what to do back in this country? Well, if you don't want that, the only way to do that is with this finger. This finger must be stained in red ink. This finger must be driven by issue analysis and solution. This finger must stand up for a new society of getting it done. This finger must be known as an all-inclusive national symbol of progress, which is, in my humble opinion, the PNM. So I say to you, local government councillors, all, not elect, not candidates, prospective local government councillors, all from this amazing corporation. Bring out your votes. Bring out your people. Trinidad and Tobago, listen to issue analysis. I only have one last thing to say, and you know it. Great is the PNM. Great is the PNM, and we shall and will prevail. Thank you.